Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation's monthly economic briefing. I'd like to now introduce the CEO of the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation, Bill Allen.
Thank you, Shane, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to the latest in our series of LAEDC webinars designed to keep all of you, our members, partners, and regional stakeholders updated on the latest information we have available on the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on our region. After some very difficult winter months when so many of our customer-facing businesses were ordered to shut down again or significantly reduce their operations to slow the spread of the virus during the terrible surge in cases, hospitalizations, and most tragically deaths that our region experienced over the holidays, we can finally report some very good news today. That news is reflected in the latest numbers from the U.S. Department of Labor and our California State Employment Development Department, which just last Friday issued employment data for January and February of this year. They also updated data from last year as part of their annual benchmarking process that my colleague Shannon Sedgwick may explain in a little greater detail to you. Unfortunately, the updated data for last year shows that in many cases, the impact of the pandemic on jobs in our region was even worse than previously reported. But what is so encouraging to see in the February numbers is that once we started loosening some of the restrictions on our customer-facing businesses across LA County in February, we saw a significant boost in hiring across our most impacted sectors. And most positively impacted among those sectors was the leisure and hospitality industry, with significant gains of jobs across sectors like accommodation and food services, with restaurants anchoring the boost in food services jobs. There were also notable gains as well in education and personal services, as these sectors are beginning to open up again as well. Though, as Shannon will likely tell you, certain other sectors continued to struggle and some even lost jobs again in February. We certainly expect to see the continued hiring in these sectors that are customer facing and in other sectors continue throughout the spring, especially as our theme parks, theaters, and sporting events are allowed to welcome the public again, and our restaurant and retail capacity is allowed to increase again as we move into less restrictive tiers of our state's public health protocols. The key to this positive trend continuing, of course, is accelerating the administration of vaccines. As of today, more than 17 million doses have been given to Californians, enough for 29% of us to have received at least a first dose, and more than 15% of us to be fully vaccinated across this state. Nearly 4 million of those have been delivered in LA County, so we are generally on pace with the state. But we have a long way to go before we reach herd immunity. The signs, though, are very positive, as much higher percentages of people over 65 have now been vaccinated in LA County and across the state, and as a result, new cases and hospitalizations among that age group have declined dramatically. Our region is expecting its largest delivery of vaccines this week, and those numbers should continue to rise in the weeks ahead. As of Wednesday, April 1, all adults will be able to receive a vaccine appointment, and as of April 15, all adults over 16 are expected to be able to schedule a vaccine appointment. We would encourage all of our LAEDC members, partners, and friends to schedule your vaccine appointment as soon as possible and help encourage others to do so. Finally, we're pleased to learn from the County Public Health Department last week that they have made great progress in more equitably distributing vaccine to lower income communities and communities of color during the month of March than had been occurring in January and February. And we certainly hope to see that continue given the inequitable health and economic impacts visited upon our lower income communities of color over the past year. LAEDC will continue to provide not only economic updates on the impact of the pandemic on our regions, industries, jobs, and people, but we will also continue to provide outreach and assistance to small businesses, micro-enterprises, and community-serving nonprofits throughout Los Angeles County with a particular focus on our lower-income communities. A great deal of damage has been done to the businesses in those communities, and a great deal of work is yet to be done to help them recover. We also hope to be working with the county in the weeks ahead to reactivate our Safer at Work campaign, because it will be critically important for those who will be going back to workplaces in the weeks and months ahead that they be as safe as possible in those workplaces, so that we do not encounter any unnecessary resurgence of the virus in the coming months as we continue to deliver vaccines in an effort to reach herd immunity in our region. Unfortunately, several other major metropolitan regions across this country and nations across the world are still seeing significant resurgence of the virus, leading to a slowing of their reopening processes or a reversal of them in some cases. So I hasten to remind you all today, we are not yet out of the woods. And though we remain optimistic at the LAEDC that our economy will continue to recover significantly, though not completely from a jobs perspective this year, our individual and collective vigilance will be required to assure that our recovery remains on track. To shed more light and share more details on all of this with you, I'll now turn the platform over to my colleague Shannon Sedgwick, the director of our Institute for Applied Economics. Thank you all for being with us. Shannon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bill. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the LAEDC for today's monthly economic briefing. I hope that you and your families are continuing to keep well, stay safe, and to social distance as we make our way through the recovery process. Today, I'm going to go over the latest local area employment situation in LA County, covering the months of January and February with some good news there. And we're going to spend just a few minutes talking about the new benchmark and what that means for our monthly jobs data. When the regional stay-at-home order was rescinded statewide on January 25th, all counties fell back under the rules and framework of the Blueprint for a Safer Economy. And it's 4 color-coded tiers that indicate which activities and businesses are open based on local case rates, hospitalizations, and test positivity. As of March 23rd, LA County is classified as Tier 2. So under the red tier, capacity restrictions, they ease slightly, with only some non-essential indoor business operations still closed. At our last webinar in February, 52 of the 58 counties in the state of California, including Los Angeles County, were in the first purple widespread tier, which again is the most restrictive. Currently, only 8 counties remain in that purple tier, while 39 counties, including all of Southern California, are now in the second red substantial tier. So 83% of the state's population live in counties that are now in the red tier. Over the weekend, the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health reported that we have surpassed the 1.2 million positive cases mark of COVID-19 across LA County, with over 23,000 deaths. Lower case numbers are leading to a flattening out of total cases that you can see through February and March. On Friday, the Department of Public Health announced the 7-day average for daily new cases of COVID-19 reached 330. This is well below the 7-day average high of 15,200 new daily cases that we experienced on January 8th. Current hospitalization numbers are also in stark contrast to the higher numbers we were seeing in January just after the holiday season. On Friday, just under 700 people with COVID-19 were hospitalized in the county, with 177 of those in the ICU. The distribution of COVID-19 vaccines in Los Angeles County continues. The county's received close to 8.3 million doses of the vaccine, 1.2 million of which are second doses, and just over 67,000 were the single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Vaccine eligibility categories have now been expanded to include gardeners and landscapers, housekeepers, and private child caretakers working at least 20 hours per week, and flight crews that live or are based in Los Angeles County. As Bill said, starting April 1st, the COVID-19 vaccine eligibility will expand again to individuals age 50 and older, and starting April 15th, for individuals age 16 and older. However, the county will need to receive a substantial increase in vaccine supplies in order to meet this need. More than 80 mobile vaccination teams with a priority of vaccinating residents 65 years and older were scheduled to administer vaccinations at senior housing sites, senior centers, faith-based organizations, and community-based organizations in LA County's hardest hit communities. We're seeing the number of UI claimants begin to decline from late January to mid-March, implying that the post-second wave recovery process is in effect. According to the latest data, the California Employment Department Development Department has processed close to 21.3 million claims since the pandemic began in March through the regular UI program, reopen and extension claims, as well as the separate pandemic unemployment assistance program, with total unemployment benefits paid to Californian workers during the pandemic reaching $132 billion. UI still remains a lifeline for employees in hard-hit service sectors that are still operating at reduced capacity. Upon the signing of the Federal American Rescue Plan, the EDD took action to roll out expanded federal unemployment benefits, including continuing without interruption the extra $300 supplement payment, the weekly supplement payment for people collecting state UI. This supplemental benefit continues through to September 4th. And just a reminder that this supplemental payment helps to augment California's maximum weekly benefit of $450 per week. So with the additional benefit, it puts payments just above the living wage threshold for a single adult. Throughout the year, monthly labor force and employment by industry data are estimated based on sample data. Once yearly, the California EDD undertakes a large annual revision process in which these estimates are updated, referred to as benchmarking. The purpose of benchmarking is to realign these monthly estimates with actual tax record data. So about 97% of total non-farm employment within the scope of the establishment survey in the US is covered by UI unemployment insurance. So employers covered by UI laws, they report employment and wage information quarterly 4 times per year. And that benchmark revision is the difference between the universe count of employment, which are UI-based population counts, and its corresponding monthly sample-based current employment series estimates that we typically present to you on a monthly basis. This chart presents the original total non-farm employment estimates for 2020 with the 2019 benchmark compared to the revised data for January 2020 through December 2020 with the new 2020 benchmark data that was just released. Compared with the sample-based published estimates, the benchmarking process revealed that the original estimates weren't fully capturing all of the job loss experienced in LA County throughout the pandemic. Between April and December, the monthly non-farm employment revision ranged between 1.8% to 3.3% lower than originally estimated. The downward revisions we're seeing are related to the UI population counts from tax data coming in lower than the estimates. So this means that non-farm employment took a larger hit during the pandemic, and that recovery wasn't as strong. Here we look at the difference between the original estimates and the revised jobs data by the number of jobs. Moving forward, all of our employment data will now reflect the new benchmark. The local area data released covering the month of January was delayed due to the benchmarking process at the EDD. So both January and February released this month, and we'll go over the employment situation for LA County for the first 2 months of 2021. The resident labor force is the sum of the number of individuals employed and those who are classified as unemployed, people who are jobless, looking for a job, and available to work. The civilian labor force increased non-seasonally adjusted. It increased by more than 210,000 over the month from January to February to just over 5.1 million in February of 2021. This was driven by residents finding employment between January and February. February is the first month where the labor force numbered over 5 million since February of last year. Civilian employment increased by almost 280,000 over the month, reaching close to 4.6 million in February of 2021, while unemployment decreased by 69,000 to just under 557,000. Here we have the monthly unemployment rate in Los Angeles County throughout the pandemic. May had the highest unemployment rate. However, The unemployment rate in the county remained above 17% from April all the way through August. The rate declined from September to November, dipping up slightly in December and January as the health order reinstated restrictions during the second wave. February's unemployment rate declined, reflecting the loosening of restrictions when the regional stay-at-home order was rescinded statewide on January 25th. If we look at the trend of LA County's unemployment rate, we see over the last year and beyond, we see that the county's rate has now fallen below the highest levels we experienced during the Great Recession. In September of 2010, the rate was 13.2. If we look at the monthly change in LA County's unemployment rate, we see that February was the first time the rate fell after 2 consecutive increases in December and January. In February, the rate fell by 1.8 percentage points below the January level, though it's still 6.2 percentage points higher than LA County's unemployment rate in February of last year. Throughout the pandemic, we experienced the greatest job loss associated with the measures taken to mitigate the spread of the virus between March and April. And when the revision, that has not changed, but the number has. We now see that more than 772,000 jobs fell off county non-farm payrolls. And since then, we've added close to 28% of those jobs back as we're working our way through the phased reopening process. From January to February, non-farm employment in LA County reversed that decline in jobs related to the more restrictive health orders in December and January. So close to 48,000 non-farm jobs were added to the payroll in February once these restrictions were suspended. Here we have the month-over-month change. So again, we see that job growth is mixed. Usually when we look at monthly changes, we do see this, that it's mixed across the industries. So the loosening of those health order restrictions positively impacted employment in a number of industries, including accommodation and food services, which added over 32,000 jobs as outdoor and limited capacity indoor dining options have resumed. Retail trade lost 4,000 jobs over the month, and construction, government, and transportation, warehousing, and utilities also showed declines from January to February. Month-over-month employment trends from 2019 through February of 2021 across various industries in LA County are displayed here. When we look at the monthly trend, we see that service sectors heavily impacted throughout the pandemic have been volatile, but are now showing some growth. And while the February report showed some positive changes from January, we again see that overall employment in Los Angeles County is significantly down across many industries year over year. Almost all industry sectors have experienced employment contractions. And even though accommodation and food services added the most jobs last month, the sector is still down by 143,000 jobs from last year before the pandemic hit. And if we look at year over year employment trends, we see that the hardest industries still have a tough road ahead of them. A whole year has passed since the Safer at Home order was issued in response to the COVID-19 health crisis last March. While we still find ourselves dealing with the pandemic, we are finally starting to see signs of recovery. With the benchmarking that took place, we just found out that job loss was a little worse than originally estimated, but there's a lot to be optimistic about. Vaccines continue to be administered, number of cases are falling, and restrictions are finally being loosened in Los Angeles County as it moved into the red substantial tier for the first time since the blueprint for the 4-tier system was put into place. All of these things will contribute to the recovery of jobs lost during the pandemic. As long as the trajectory of recovery is not negatively impacted again, with restrictions being reinstated on businesses, we should be on track to continuously gain jobs moving forward. March and April is the time for spring break and numerous religious and spiritual holidays. So just a quick reminder that even though case numbers have fallen and many people have gotten the vaccine, the COVID-19 pandemic is not yet over. A travel advisory still remains in effect in Los Angeles County, and gathering with people from other households still increases the risk of getting and spreading COVID-19. New daily cases of COVID-19 are rising slightly in the US and abroad, giving rise to some concern. So we must remain diligent and continue to take precautions, including the use of masks and washing our hands, practicing social distancing, limiting non-essential activities, avoiding contact with members of other households, and of course, getting vaccinated when it's our turn. Remember, our economic recovery depends upon avoiding future restrictions and health orders. Next, Bill and I will be answering questions.
Shannon, has the data given any insight as to which sectors are going to have the most rapid recovery?
Well, the sectors that have been facing the most severe restrictions, when they come back online, they're going to show the most growth because it's artificially been held down. So you still had a number of leisure and hospitality industries that were not open. You have restaurants that are open, but they're still operating under pretty strict capacity limits, as are other types of operations like gyms. So as they start to open and there's more capacity, you'll need more workers. These are also the industries that are kind of hardest hit, these service industries. And so, in the long term, there might be some negative impacts due to business closures and, increased debt that might be associated with the industry, but they'll immediately need people to work in order to recoup some of that lost revenue that they've been experiencing.
Thank you, Shannon. Next question is, Bill, I'm going to toss this one over to you. Are hotel occupancy rates in the metro LA area and LAX areas improving? And if so, which areas of the county are recovering the fastest?
So I'll give you the general countywide answer first, and that is that occupancy rates across the county are improving quite well. In fact, the most recent week in March 14 to 20, there were 445,000 room nights sold, the best week since the first week of March a year ago. Weekend occupancy, in fact, last week reached 71%, which is the best we've seen in quite some time. And the overall occupancy in the month of March to date is about 56%, also the best we've seen since February of 2020. We don't have internally at the LAEDC the breakdown of the submarkets, but our friends at LA Tourism do. So I would encourage anyone who's interested in knowing more about the recovery in submarkets at the airport or in other suburban areas of LA County or coastal areas of LA County or downtown LA County to check with LA Tourism, because the numbers are the best they've been in a year. They are continued to be projected to improve throughout the summer. But it is a little uneven. As we all know, leisure travel has been coming back faster than business travel. So I would assume, though I don't have the data at hand, that the business travel associated hotels in downtown or along the airport area associated with convention centers and conferences are probably recovering more slowly than more leisure travel oriented hotels are. And of course, the drive-to travel market has recovered more quickly than the domestic or international travel market. So again, hotels and hotel corridors more dependent on international travel would be recovering more slowly, as there are still so many restrictions on that. But the general news is positive for the recovery of our hotel industry here in LA.
Does the industry trend in lower payroll indicate that employees are being paid less for the work they do, or that they are paying fewer employees?
I think it probably has to do with the fact that you're still having the large number of businesses that are operating in a limited capacity. So you don't have full hours available to a lot of the workers. So that's definitely one of the factors there. So what the data is telling us is that a lot of the lower income jobs haven't really rebounded yet. And you can see that because most of those lower income jobs are in service sectors. And then those service sectors, those are the ones that have faced the most restrictions, even though the restrictions are loosening as we move through separate tiers. They're still in place. There's capacity limits still in place. And so they're going to have people coming back to work, but they're still operating on limited hours and at a limited capacity. So they're not going to be like they were instantly pre-pandemic.
Excellent. Thank you, Shannon. Bill, I want to ask you this next question from our wonderful friend Jane Oates at Working Nation. Is there capacity for reskilling workers who need to change sectors?
First of all, thank you, Jane, for that question. And thanks for the work you and your colleagues at Working Nation do to promote the fact that we need reskilling in this country, that the nature of work is changing all across this nation. Yes, there is significant capacity here in Los Angeles County through our community colleges in particular, through our adult education programs, through our state universities, private training providers. We have significant capacity throughout Los Angeles County for reskilling and upskilling, and we need to deploy that capacity. Some of these jobs that were lost to the pandemic will not be coming back due to the changing nature of consumer and business behaviors facilitated by the pandemic. Lockdowns would cause businesses to operate in different ways. Trends that were expected in digitization or e-commerce or telehealth that were expected to unfold over the next 5 or 10 years were accelerated into just the past year. But this creates new opportunities for people to find training and take advantage of their transferable skills. So this is something we all need to promote, as you do so brilliantly through Working Nation, as our partners do through the Community College Center for Competitive Workforce. We'll continue to be publishing data from Shannon's team, holding industry cluster council meetings to help refine the information that is most current and projected in the near future from industries about employment trends, so that our education partners can adjust their curriculum so that people can get those upskilling and reskilling opportunities they need to accelerate their reentry into the workforce with the new skills they'll obtain for the new jobs that will emerge here in our region. Thanks, Jane.
And I'd like to just add a little bit to that. So in some of our research work that we're doing, specifically if you refer to our Pathways for Economic Resiliency report, we did take a look at some of the skills that were possessed by workers in hardest hit industries, and took a look at industries that were poised to grow and what kind of skills they were looking for in their workers, to see if we could identify ways that they could transition in other industries in the event that these service industries that have been decimated don't rebound as quickly.
Shane, I noticed Ted Green asked a follow-up question on the hotel occupancy rates that affect as Project Room Key or other government programs. I would expect it's a fairly modest impact, because I think it's been a few thousand hotel rooms that have been provided for our homeless community, and that's been a really important service to our homeless community. But I expect it's been a relatively modest impact. And I think what we're seeing is the willingness for some people to travel, as I said, initially in the drive to market opportunities. But I think you'll see more domestic travel filling rooms in the months ahead, and perhaps by the fall, more business travel filling rooms as well.
Thanks.
There's a question I can answer from
Absolutely,
Marnie.
Shannon.
So the question is, have there been any updates on unemployment fraud claims in California and the recovery of those funds? So most of the fraud that's been taking place in the UI claims is related to the PUA, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. And the reason why it's so prevalent there is there was a little loophole that they weren't requiring identity verifications. Once they've recognized the issue, the EDD has put in place an identity verification system where they're doing basically live scanned approvals. So that's cut down tremendously on the amount of fraud. But I'm not sure about the recovery of funds at this point, but I do know that that has helped. The identification verification has helped EDD tremendously in at least identifying claims that might be fraudulent.
I see a question in the chat about repopulating commercial real estate.
Absolutely. You all are making it easy on me today.
I would just note that this is really a better question for our commercial real estate owners, operators, and brokers who are hard at work determining various scenarios. But they're going to be important to our recovery, particularly in the densest areas of commercial real estate like downtown and other commercial corridors, where so many of the service providing industries support the people who work in those commercial office buildings in particular. So we've seen a devastation of our restaurant community in downtown Los Angeles, and I think many of our other downtowns across this county have seen a similar struggle as the folks who commuted in to do their work in those corridors tended to have lunch and sometimes dinner or cocktails in the restaurants in those areas. And they're not there now. The population of our downtown towers in downtown LA is a small fraction of what it was a year ago before the pandemic. And so businesses are really trying to determine how quickly they can get their workforce back once they're vaccinated, and how many of them want to come back full time. And there are a number of different scenarios being explored in our market and around this country and around the world in terms of remote work versus presence in the office balance. And what does that mean for deployment of office space? What does that mean for population in those environments on a day-to-day basis? So a lot remains to be seen on that, but we need to all do collective work because if we get to a situation where there's a substantial vacancy rate in our commercial office corridors, that will have an impact on the recovery of restaurants and service providing retail and other establishments in those commercial corridors.
Shannon, so I have a question for you regarding the aerospace industry, which is not as heavily impacted as we've seen in the hospitality industry.
Sure. Well, aerospace has been one of the manufacturing industries that really didn't show a large impact with COVID-19. They were still adding to their payrolls well into the pandemic. You see that, when we report our numbers, it's usually in industry sectors, just so that we can fit them all in a single chart and it doesn't get too confusing. But if you look at the transportation, the warehousing, transportation, trade industry, you're seeing growth in the warehousing element, even though you're seeing a decline in transportation, which is largely due to air transportation. And utilities is kind of one of those that it continues on. So you don't see much change in the way of employment for that particular sector. We've spoken so much about those that have been hardest hit and how they're really the service sectors, but there are, of course, certain elements of retail that we know that have done extremely well, including grocery stores and your Home Depots and all of that. Anything that stands to benefit from a change in people's behaviors, that change is forced by restrictions. Those are those industries that haven't been feeling the impact of the pandemic as much. When you group them in aggregate, it kind of it obscures the movements within. You look at manufacturing as a whole and you see a decline, but you don't realize that you have transportation industries related to our EV, our electric vehicles cluster here that's leading to significant employment growth in our transportation manufacturing. The switch to everyone relying more on commerce, on online, on Amazon, on retail. It's causing warehousing to grow. It's causing those trade and logistics industries to be less impacted. Wholesale trade is a little different because a lot of the wholesale activity was leading up into, they were the supply chain for a lot of retailers, that when that activity is declined, it now kind of the ripple effect will impact wholesale. So there's, I guess you could say it's hard to really pick one over the other than if you kind of make that connection on, okay, if you're restricting activity and behavior is changing, which industries stand to benefit from that?
Excellent. Well, thank you, Shannon, and thank you, Bill, as well, for delivering a very informational webinar once again. And to everyone attending, before we sign off, I do want to share that, and getting my slides back up there, that we want to encourage everyone, specifically our municipality representatives and partners, to join us on Wednesday, April 14th for the 88 City Summit. The summit provides a conversation space where local government leaders across LA County share and create solutions to the economic development challenges our cities and unincorporated communities face. This year's conversations will focus around achieving inclusive economic recovery for our region, and we will have 3 panel discussions focusing on digital solutions and addressing the digital divide, focusing on labor market solutions and addressing the workforce, and focusing on enterprise solutions and addressing small business and business recovery. So once again, we do encourage everyone to sign up and attend. And if you are a member, you do receive 2 complimentary admissions. So please email me directly. And I believe our colleague Ricardo just put the link in there for you to check out the event. And then as always, everyone will receive an email later this week with a link to the recording of today's webinar. And the next economic briefing to put on your calendars is going to be next month on Monday, April 19th at 11 a.m. Pacific. We do always encourage you to visit our LAEDC COVID-19 response page for additional resources at laedc.org/coronavirus. And of course, if you have any other questions that you would like answered or help addressing, please email me directly at shane.cullen@laedc.org. And we'll be sure to work with our colleagues across the organization to address those. So once again, thank you all for joining us for another monthly economic briefing, and we will see you next month.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe at work.